So the Indian film industry is vast and diverse, and Bollywood is an indispensable part of it. Despite that fact, it has a reputation of being a money-making machine. When I saw the trailer for the film Bhoot by Dharma Productions, I felt that it was slightly on the creative side and it was experimental. My question to you is, should I watch it or not?
So, in the context of this movie, that's a complicated question.
Yeah.
We were bewildered by the entire experience,
Yes.
but we have so much to say.
Yeah.
We'll first look at the movie layer by layer,
Right.
and then we'll give our verdict.
Yes, I think we are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
We just finished watching the film, and it's been an overwhelming experience.
Right.
In a nice way as well as in a mediocre.
Not so nice
Yeah.
way. Yeah. So, sir, what are your first thoughts about?
Well, I feel when I saw the name Ram Gopal Verma, there was special thanks to Ram Gopal Verma. I was really amused. I was
Natural
like,
reactions.
okay, where is this going? But when I finished watching the film, I felt the credit has been given where it's due for two reasons, and it's odd that I didn't realize for the whole duration of the film. It took only after I finished watching the film did I realize that it actually had no song, and that's very uncommon for a Dharma film. It had absolutely no song, or maybe there was parts of it.
Now that I think about it,
Yeah?
it's strange.
Yeah, it's strange, right?
It's a strange choice.
And
yeah.
for Dharma film, that's so when Sonic's talking about when Srirag is talking about it being experimental, I think that just leaving just going offbeat in that sense is a great.
Even the intro,
Even the intro sequence,
by
yes,
Dharma
yes,
Productions
yes,
was different because so it's almost like picking a page out of Hollywood books.
Yeah.
And
How so though?
because we have so many production houses having their, movie-based, theme-based intros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was
kind
new
of-
as well.
That was new.
as well.
That's what.
Yeah, I was like when the camera pans, and you see the word Dharma sort of scratched onto the metal.
Yeah.
You're not sure if this is for real. You're like, if, I'm sure they're going to bring back the old sort of the whole circular logo that they
Yeah.
have, but they don't. And even the music that doesn't play for the whole duration. So you like it kind of at the very beginning, it kind of tells you that it's visually, it's conceptually, it's
taking a different path.
it's going to
Yeah.
be apart from what everything that they've done before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And speaking of experimental, so in a nutshell, when I look at the movie, I look at devices and I look at not so subtle devices, but again, subtle devices that were used.
Okay.
They used, so I mean, this movie has to scare you.
Yeah.
What
It's a
will
horror.
it,
It's a horror film.
what will it use
Yeah.
to scare the audience? Now it used jump scares, it used teases
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
It used these repetitions and stuff,
Yeah.
and a lot of plot elements, but it also used these interesting sort of interactions with devices like camcorders and dolls and stuff, which is revealed in the trailer also. Because of which my expectations were a little inclined towards them.
Okay, they were.
Yeah.
I think I didn't see the trailer very carefully.
Oh.
I really didn't see it. So when these elements came in, it was refreshing because
I don't know about the camcorders, but the dolls and all,
Yeah, they-
I found the treatment a little different.
yeah.
When I watched
mean,
the
a lot of horror films came to my mind when I was watching it actually. So the found footage kind of a stuff in Blair Witch Project or dolls in sort of almost every, and especially in Bhoot, because Bhoot also Ram Gopal Verma when he's thanked, he also uses the doll as a device.
Right.
And I think there are, I think it's like an apt tribute to his earlier film, but it also extends the genre a little bit. So and then I also remembered Talash for the psychological element a little bit.
Yeah.
Room for some other elements. So yeah, you could see that there was an amalgam of various elements that we are familiar with, but it does in a very nice and unpredictable way, and not in a very obvious way.
It depends on the viewer too, right? I mean, you were aware of all these.
Yes.
I wasn't. It was like a
yeah.
first time horror experience for me in a cinema,
Oh,
in
okay.
a theater. So yeah, that was hence these were some things which put them together. It was sounding very interesting.
No, it is very interesting because it's not very obvious, but yet you realize that the elements have been used well.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have been used, but they've
yeah,
been
yeah,
used
yeah.
well. I mean, how many choices do you have with horror? I mean, Ghost Stories was just out, and we've seen 4 different takes on horror. And I think, but this movie is a commercial mainstream movie, so it kind of
Yeah.
uses, like you said, it uses teasers and jump scare a
yeah.
lot. And in fact, it becomes very interesting. It is very interesting. It's like a roller coaster ride. You sort of jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. And after, especially after post Valentine, when you probably may have a partner, it's good to go with them because then you could just hold on to each other when the jump scares happen, just like you would do in a real sort of roller coaster ride. So it's good, but
Yeah, there's
it
a
takes
but.
it takes a time to come into its own.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I felt that a lot of first half felt a little redundant, repetitive, very basic, a bit superficial maybe. Also, I felt that I was noticing the VFX a bit too much, so that I think the story hadn't really pulled me in as much as I wished it to.
yeah, that's interesting because I had a contrasting, like my opinion is probably opposite of that.
Yeah?
Yeah. So for the first half, I could see these jump scares. It was like a first time experience. They're using these jump scares at different times. Towards the second half, it was like I could almost expect when the jump scare is
So
happening.
there's a pattern
Yeah.
that kind of becomes clear to the
Yeah,
audience.
there are a few teases. I wouldn't give the number obviously, but I could predict almost every single one of them.
Yeah, so the second half becomes a little easy because now you're used to the tone of the film, and you can focus on the story. Maybe that's the reason.
Could
why
be
for me,
intentional. Yeah.
For me, the second half worked much better because all the not so convincing elements of the first half are really are kind of tied in together in a very in a self-explanatory way. Like there's no attempt to explain to the audience what is what, but then it kind of ties in naturally, and you feel like, oh my god. So that seems a little more wholesome.
Probably the point in the second half where I've zoned out was when there was so much emotional play, which sort of was similar to a Bollywood mainstream movie.
Yes.
And it was like till this point you were treating the movie in a certain way,
It was
and now you're
devoid
taking
of-
a different approach. I didn't like it. But then, after that, it picked up again towards the
I
end.
think emotions. I mean, it's very difficult to explain, but somehow it worked. It worked for me.
It worked for you.
It worked for me. The emotional layer really worked for me because I thought, and I mean, not that it worked entirely, but there were places where I felt that they could have done a bit more with science and less with emotion.
Yeah.
But then no complaints. I mean, they know what they're serving the audience and what the audience would react well to.
One thing that I felt, I asked myself, why am I, zoning out at these points? And I felt that it was probably all down to acting.
True, and you bring a very valid point, something that we should definitely touch upon. I mean, Vicky Kaushal seems like he's left to his own.
Exactly.
I mean, he's great, he's good. Although I feel he could have been directed a little better at some points. But I feel the supporting cast doesn't do much.
Yeah, and even the good actors are like cameos in the movie.
Bhumi Pednekar, for example.
Yeah, Bhumi Pednekar.
She's there for the picture's sake.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, Vicky Kaushal seems like if he could have borrowed some support from everyone else around, it could have really worked.
Yeah, it could have worked. Yeah. It could have bound the movie together.
Much more strongly. But even then, without that also, I think Vicky Kaushal and the element of horror and the ghost itself, and there's no spoiler here because we've seen it in the trailer.
Yeah.
All these elements, the space, the Vicky Kaushal's character and the antagonist, the ghost, they kind of work very together. They work very well together.
That's interesting because so in my view, when I looked at the movie, I found two different narratives. There was one of this space which you're talking about. The ship was established, as you can probably have a look from the trailer. and there was the character that was established, and at some points it was almost like what is it trying to do, which I felt they were playing with
Yeah.
in the first half.
Yeah.
But then when the second half came in and they were like,
You got to
they
know
were
the ship also a
decisive.
little better.
Yeah, when they were decisive about the plot, it worked for some people, it didn't work for others.
Yeah, for
Because
me, even ship wasn't established very well. Like there were parts of the ship that were established, but not the entire ship. But as we go deeper into this character, just like we do for Vicky Kaushal's character and everybody else's, I think that's when you actually go in and start exploring them deeply. And I think that's when the film comes in. Then that's when you realize that there's a second layer to it, a much more deeper, much more serious layer to it. It's not just frivolous. It's not just for the sake of we made horror and let's just entertain you with horror.
Yeah.
We could pack 20 jump scares in an hour.
I totally agree with you there. In fact, I feel giving credit where credit is due. The cinematographers did a good job because there were these interesting camera shots of not only people but simply those dominant forces, the ship, how it was visually described. All that was impressive. But on the other hand, there were these CGI'd ghosts which I couldn't connect with.
And also CGI sort of external shots of the ship, the sea, and all of that. I felt that it didn't do too much for me. I mean, they could have been integrated better. I guess.
It was too loud sometimes.
The music.
No, visually loud. It was very graphic and which is the point of a horror movie. Get you, but sometimes it could have just been a little more, subtle.
I was okay with it though.
You were
I was
okay
like they kind of made very clear which direction they are going in. It wasn't supposed to be a very subtle, spooky film. It had to be. It is an in-your-face horror, and I think they worked with all the elements there, and it was okay for me. It was okay. I mean, at least that way they're not promising one thing and doing another. What you promise you, they're giving you, and they're giving you a whole lot of it.
This movie does make a stand, and that is clear, as you're saying. I'm just reiterating. You said they promised something, they fulfilled it. That's the stand they're taking.
So it's like paisa vasool. It's definitely paisa vasool.
Paisa vasool, and they did experiment. So much. And
it's entertaining. Definitely, it's entertaining. The first half didn't work for me because I felt it was just horror for the sake of horror. It didn't do much to me. But the second half, the story come into its own, and that's where you realize that, oh my god, there is definitely thought given to it. All the elements tie in very well. The biggest achievement of the film is that at no point nothing seems illogical. After having watched it, all the loose ends are tied in very beautifully, and it all falls into place somehow. And that's a very very rare thing to achieve, because I think horror movies tend to sort of dislocate logic when it comes to finding explanation. I think I've seen a lot of films fail, and there's always that director kind of take a flight of fancy and say film hai, kuch bhi ho sakta hai. But here I think everything falls into place. So I think full credits to the story writer, but storytelling wise, like I said, how they've kind of divided it into two halves. The first part is like the premise, but an overstated premise, and the second part is where you will take the movie a little seriously.
What I can agree with is that on paper it's a very, very good story.
On paper, it must have been an awesome story.
Yes. But the treatment is where
it could improve.
They lost me there.
Not completely though.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent.
But there's a part two. So maybe this is the pilot exercise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is the pilot exercise, and they're kind of trying it all out. And if this does well, then probably the part two would be a little more sophisticated. I think that's the word I was looking for. That it could all have been a little more sophisticated in terms of the presentation, in terms of the storytelling. Could have been a little bit neater, at least in the first half. Second half is beautiful. For me, that's quite. I mean, we've heard of films with. I mean, there's almost a phrase that's coined for second half, the curse of the second half. Like the second half in India, in Indian movies, in Hindi movies especially, sort of people kind of get lost, and which is what you said, you zoned out in the second half, right? For me, I was like, oh, it's all making sense now. It's all making sense.
It's subjective, and I mean, but we can agree on certain points, which really the
So we
film
shouldn't
stood for.
we shouldn't compare movies obviously, but just since we're I'm deciding whether to watch it or not.
Yes.
I would like to know how you think this movie stands against the global, like different movies in worldwide, different horror movies, and the existing horror movies in Bollywood.
I think it stands apart in a very beautiful way. You should definitely watch it. I like I said, a lot of movies were playing in my head when I was watching it. There are these references, so I could imagine a Blair Witch Project, and this is not a spoiler really. I'm not saying this that you have elements from the Blair Witch Project, but there are definite elements. And then so there's Blair Witch Project. There's also this whole psychological element associated with it, which we've seen in Talash. Then there's some elements from the movie room, although that's not a horror film. I think it's at par. It just needs a bit of sophistication in telling the story, a little more straightforwardness in the first half. There are too many elements. I'm glad there are too many because they spread the whole thing, and then they kind of put it all together later on. So it's an approach to filmmaking, but I think for the thrill of it, you should definitely watch it.
I feel like in the context of the present world, probably we can't compare this movie to at this point, but this is like a starting point of starting to compare Indian horror with the storytelling in other horror movies.
The promise is great.
Yeah, we started with the point that it had experimental devices within the movie.
Yes.
So
the movie itself is not experimental, but the fact that Dharma Production House is experimenting with this genre, that itself is a great thing, and it's not all that neat. It's tacky in parts, but it's definitely worth looking at.
A watch.
Yeah, it's a watch. It's a watch. For me, wait for the first half to get over, and second half you enjoy. But for you, you enjoy the first half, and second half you zoned out. So I think here we've got a contradiction, but I think we agree on the fact that. Please carry on.
We are bringing out the fact
that you should watch it.
You should watch it. For me, it's like if there are these key elements wherein they're exploring the space, all those scenes, if you club it in together, it can make a good short film.
It can make a good short film. It can actually make a good series.
Yeah.
Like I was imagining that parts of it could be cut and shown in an episodic manner.
Yeah. So I felt, those parts, you should watch it. Other parts didn't really fit in with me personally. But just the fact that we spoke so much about it probably
and the
should make it an intriguing watch.
Yeah, and this review might sound a little more jumbled than how we went because I think we're still very fresh with the experience, and quite an experience it was. There were parts when I was just watching the movie like that. It was quite an experience, yeah.
So,
yes, watch it. You won't regret. I'm sure you won't regret.
And we'd like to have your opinions too. Because very honestly, I would like to, even from the context of a person who has watched a lot of horror and is entirely into horror, and from the context of a person like me who hasn't watched.
I haven't watched a lot of horror, but I've watched some horror that have stayed with me.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So from all sides we want perspectives.
Yes.
So please do bring it on.
Yeah.
So I'm not a person who has watched many horror movies, but the ones that I have watched follow a certain preset formula. But according to your reviews, this film seems different, and it seems like a movie which will put Indian horror on the map. Despite that, I'm not going to say that I'll definitely go and watch it in theaters, but I'll definitely consider doing so.